Yes,
This meeting
now we
is
have
being
it all
recorded.
running. Perfect. So let's kickstart the session. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to the next screen. Next slide.
Okay, just let me see how. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, a brief intro about myself. I'm currently working as a senior product manager in PayPal, but it has been a long, meandering journey to product management for me. So I've started out as a developer almost 10, 11 years back, did a product internship with Make My Trip, and I was part of Deloitte where I was doing tech strategy management consulting. And right now I'm a product manager. So looking forward to interacting with you all. And I really want to keep this session interactive. So yeah, looking forward to the session. Let's go over to the next slide. Sure. So first, I would like to understand from you guys on where are you in your journey to become a PM? And according to you, what gaps are preventing you from becoming a PM today? And what exactly are you looking to gain from this session? Can we go around the room and maybe we can take some.
Yeah, we can
feedback?
do that. We can either unmute microphone, just share in the chat if you don't feel comfortable talking, whatever, just really works. Everybody's being really shy.
Yeah, this is just getting to know you better. There's nothing to be shy of. I'm just trying to understand you better so that I can tailor the content according to your needs. So I'm just trying to understand where you are in your journey. Are you a fresher? Do you have few years of experience? Are you coming from a tech background, a non-tech background? And have you already started giving interviews for a PM? Yeah.
Hey, hi, Abhimanyu. I'll probably go. I have 14 years of experience and I'm a PM currently. But a couple of years back, I know I did my weekend MBA from IIM Bangalore. And, though we all used to take the same course, which the regular two-year PGP folks used to take, we didn't have placements because we're coming from industry. And making the transition was very difficult because we did not have the title as well. So the market has already flooded a lot of product managers. So why would they want to take somebody who doesn't have the title? So that was one barrier that I had at that point of time. And eventually the way how I break that barrier was with respect to the network that I had. Though I had learned all the PM frameworks and all that MBA and YAN that we got from the MBA. The network actually helped. So one of my classmates himself, vouched for me in his organization, and that helped me cross the barrier. But yeah, I'm not sure about the other people there. I mean, we're just getting people in the chat saying, okay, some of them most of them are in development background. In fact, even I had a developer background before moving on to the PM role now.
Got it. So currently, based on your experience, what are you specifically looking to gain from this session? Since, and it may be somebody else also who can pitch in.
I can actually add, while you guys are getting yourself together, maybe getting some strength to answer. We have actually some answers in the chat, so I'll just I'll tell them. I have a developer background too, and I'm looking to transition to PM role from Priya. Thank you, Priya. Sagar is saying, start PM role in current organization and looking to know more about this role. Okay, cool, thank you. Ajay, adding up marketing person trying to get into PM. By the way, very, very usual case, I think, for the US market and Europe as well. Anubhav was adding, working in marketing growth role, here you go, for 11 years plus with some product intervention as part of the role, wanted to move to a full-fledged PM role. Thank you. Prajakta is adding, I have been working as a developer for a decade and looking to transition to PM role. I think it's a very usual case for the Indian and Asian market in general to move from engineering to product, I think in my experience. And then Richard just adding up saying 5 years developer background, recently shifted to same organization as a product manager. Okay.
Got it. So to summarize, like 5 to 10 years of experience, folks from marketing or engineering trying to make a transition to PM. So that's perfect. So thanks for sharing your experience, and let's get started with the next slide. So I want to focus in this session specifically around resume building and cracking the case interview, how you can increase your chances of getting a shortlist, and then how you can maximize your chances of actually cracking the interview. Now, some of you may have already started interviewing at different levels. So again, let's make it interactive, and we'll see how to best, like how you can get the best out of this session. So now, I think for most people, it starts with getting a clarity on why do they suddenly want to become a PM. Everybody has their own reasons, but it usually is something related to either trying to help users or trying to be more close to the business, right? And each one has their own reasons, which is fine. But the next step is to really start getting to know the PM role more closely and trying to get the technical chops done. I think what GoPractice is doing is trying to fill that gap of the technical preparation, right? To the simulator driven course, plugging that gap. Now, once that's done, the next two steps would be do the resume building and actually preparing for your case interview. Now, the final stage is once you have made it, once you have become the PM, of course, on the job is learning every day. Now, there are certain times when in the job also you may feel, some sort of an existential crisis. Can you click on the next slide? Like click on next. So sometimes you wonder like what is really the meaning of the word. So you go back all the way to really questioning on why you want to become a PM. But that's typically the cycle, right? So let's go to the next slide. So I'll start by focusing on the case interview because that's the most critical part of where I see candidates facing challenges. And of course, it's a 1 hour session, so I'll not be able to cover a lot of content, but I'll try and address certain specific buckets, which probably would be useful for you, right? So from this group, it looks like most of you have started giving interviews. So you have a fair bit of idea about what a case interview is. So typically a case interview, as you all know, is situation based. It tries to test two types of main skills, behavioral and analytical. Sometimes it is domain specific. So for example, a data PM or a payments PM, these are typical roles where the interviewer is looking for some sort of a domain expertise. But for a APM or a PM level, there are also a lot of roles, especially in the e-com domains, where a lot of these domain specific skills are not required. And what actually, based on my experience, what I've seen is what maximizes the candidate's chance to convert an interview is if you are able to do a candidate driven interview. What I mean by that is typically in case rounds, there are two ways how interviews happen. One is an interviewer-led interview where you, as a candidate, you ask questions, the interviewer gives you data. But typically in a product interview, you are, as a PM, you're supposed to come up with hypothesis and drive the case forward and make certain assumptions. The interviewer wants to see as a PM, how do you deal with ambiguity? How do you make hypothesis? And how do you back them up with logical reasoning? So I think that's one of the major things that has worked for me. And any questions so far? Sure. Let's move on to the next slide then.
Sure. Sorry about that. Sometimes I have to admit new people who come up, so it just takes a bit more time than planned. Just a second. Okay, so back to sharing and next screen.
Sure. So just a brief overview of the different types of case interviews that typically get asked. There are, of course, there are many buckets, but typically you would be asked something on product design, product strategy, product execution, and product metrics, right? So these are very common questions. Typically a PM will go through 4 or 5 rounds. The first would be a hiring manager round, and then an engineering round, a design round, something like a bar raiser or a director round. So these are the, like, I'll not go into the specific types of cases in this because again, we are limited by time. And there are a lot of good content online where there are like a lot of tips, a lot of frameworks that are available. But I just wanted to introduce the types of cases that typically would get asked. Let's move on to the next slide. because I think we have a fair mature group here. So I'll skip the initial intro level slides. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Sure. So so I want to first talk about few myths as I was making the transition from a tech strategy, a management consultant to the PM. There were certain myths which were holding me back and which I had to overcome as a journey, right? So the first thing I want to talk about, and it's a pretty important one, is I need to have all the skills in a JD to apply for a PM role. I think that's one of the biggest myths, and more and more job descriptions these days are calling out that, hey, if you are really passionate about a job, just go ahead and apply. Don't think about matching all the job descriptions, right? And as per some studies that Harvard Business Review conducted, women are actually 16% less likely to apply to a job after viewing it. And they also apply to 20% fewer jobs than men. And these are just statistics, but it also means that don't just hold yourself back. If you really are passionate about a role, then go ahead and apply. Yes, it may not be always that you are getting a call, but let's look at it as a marketing funnel. So imagine you are doing a cold call campaign, right? So you would blast out emails to 100 people, and you would have a conversion rate of 3 to 4%, maybe higher if you have referrals, right? So there are some tips and tactics that I think most of us follow today, but just for the sake of calling them out, right? I think hustling for referrals is really, really important, because today, if you look at the job scenario in India, a job posting comes in LinkedIn, and I see within 24 hours there are 200 plus applicants. So how do you cut through the noise and make yourself heard and seen is something that you need to figure out. And for that, referrals work the best. And it may not be that you have to necessarily know somebody in the company. You can just email or reach out via LinkedIn. And usually I've seen people are really supportive, and they do intend to help out people who are wanting to break into PM. So don't hold yourself back. Hustling for referrals is really, really critical if you want to beat the crowd and have a fair shot at the interviews, right? And as I was saying, as the HBR studies was also saying, like, you don't have to have all the experience that is in the job description. Please apply, even if you're a fresher, even if you lack some experience, please apply to the role. And then if you get a call back, then at least you are in the funnel. You'll get to know how the interview process is looking like and what are the questions that is getting asked. It's all going to help you out. And I think I can't stress the third point enough, which is it's very important to actually research and prepare. Research about the role, what are the requirements, what is the interviewer really looking for, and prepare for the case studies accordingly. So that's myth number one, where people should not hold themselves back, to apply to a PM. That happens a lot. Um, let's move on to the next one.
Sure.
So the second myth, and I'll say, like, it's probably something candidates face a lot as well, that I need to come from a product background. As somebody was saying in the beginning of the call, right? They didn't have a product background, and it's a question that gets often asked that, hey, there are already so many PMs in the market. Why should I hire you? So the point is, uh, what is the interviewer really looking to evaluate when they are shortlisting a candidate, right? Again, look at it as a funnel. First, you need to get yourself shortlisted based on certain keywords, certain things that should resonate with the interviewer. Once you have a foot in the door, then it's up to you how well you are prepared and how well you are able to answer or crack those case rounds. But to at least get that shortlist, I think preparing your resume very, very well is important. So let's understand what typically people try and look at when they scan a resume. Sure, we all know about keyword-based scans that all job portals these days have. But beyond that, right, I'm pretty sure most of us will add those keywords. But where do we see the gaps? So there are three major areas, depending again on the level of seniority, that typically interviewers will assess you on. They will definitely assess you on execution, problem solving, and leadership. This is something probably if you are interviewing for a senior PM, then this becomes important. But if it is for an APM or a PM role, probably you'll not be asked a lot of questions around leadership. But again, it differs from company to company, role to role. But that's typically what I have observed. So let's deep dive into execution. So even in execution, there are two broad areas. One is, has the candidate demonstrated in their resume any area where they are taking initiatives, where they have the accountability? Because as a product manager, you are supposed to be ultimately accountable for everything related to your product. Sure, engineering is owning the execution. There can be marketing who is doing the communications and the marketing part of it. But still, ultimately, as a product manager, you are accountable for your product's success as well as failure. So that is something that interviewers look for. So how do you put points in your resume that actually address this, right? So you can probably put things like working with stakeholders to identify a goal or a release timeline, or did you do timely escalations to avert a certain situation? Are you taking care of delivery quality? And are you managing end-to-end projects? Now, this again differs from level to level. So again, for an APM or a PM role, managing projects is really not expected, but you are still expected to work with stakeholders like business and finance, etc., to identify your goals. While in SPM level, they would expect you to manage projects. So for example, if you are an engineering manager, you are already taking care of managing a project end to end. Let's say it's an app migration from on-prem to cloud, or it could be any other project, right? If you have managed a project, please put it accordingly in your resume so that it addresses that, hey, this is something that you have already done. You may not be a product manager, but you're still trying to demonstrate your product thinking and your product skills through demonstrating or pointing out these experiences. The second one I'll talk about is communication and collaboration skills. So this one is more about talking about, are you working to define the product requirements? How have you encountered a situation where you had to groom a particular requirement, make it really fine-tuned, and then work on it? Are you managing the life cycle of multiple features in your area? And again, it doesn't matter if it is from an engineering standpoint or a program management standpoint. A lot of my friends and people who I have mentored in the past, they were able to make a transition from program to product, just because as program, you are still working very tightly hand in glove with the product to manage multiple such things. For example, if somebody has to roll out tokenization as a recent feature that RBI mandated for all credit cards, to roll out that feature, there would be a lot of program involvement as well as product involvement. Of course, needless to say, engineering too. So if you have exhibited something like that, please call it out. And I think that would definitely boost your chances of giving your resume a shortlist. So I'll not read out all of this, but the key takeaway that I want to highlight from this slide is, right, not everybody will have done all of these things. So this is like almost 12 to 16 bullets I have put here, right? But at least try and showcase 4 to 5 bullet points that covers mutually exclusive skill sets. So maybe you can pick one from execution, one from collaboration, one from analytics skills, and try and make your profile as diverse as possible. Versus maybe you're part of a growth team today. You run A/B testing every day as part of your job. And if all your bullets are talking about just A/B testing, then probably that's not a very diverse candidate, right? I would probably not look at that particular resume as a PM candidate who has a lot of diversity in his experience or her experience. So that's the key takeaway that I want to highlight in this slide. I'll take a quick pause. I'll see if there are any questions here on this.
Let me look at the chat. So yes, the slide deck will be shared after, but no questions. If you want to ask a question, please unmute and feel free to ask, because I think it's an amazing timetable. Just like our amazing speaker said, you don't have to tick all the boxes. Just make sure to highlight the strong areas you have. Yeah, we have a question from Atul asking, are all PM interviews case-based?
Yes. all PM interviews are case-based, and that's what I was showing in the first slide, right? There would be different types of cases, and you are expected to actually do those case studies, crack those case studies, and even that is true for an engineering round also. So again, just to give an example, a typical engineering round could go like this: that you are the product manager for a particular payments company, and you need to decrease the number of failed transactions, right? Let's say there's a timeout scenario that happens. How do you reduce timeouts? That could be a scenario that you have to do, right? So you are not expected to get into a system design. That's not the problem here, like that's not the intention here, but you should be able to understand who your users are. In this case, your users are merchants. Basically your stakeholders are merchants, you are the payment processor, and then you would have the issuer. So it's like a 3-layer, and as long as you are able to draw the user flow across these 3 layers, identify where the timeout can happen and what would you do to address each of those timeout scenarios, that would be a good logical way to approach your answers. But again, yes, all PM interviews would be case based, and that's the norm.
Thank you so much for this answer. Yes, if you have any more questions, if not, we can move on. I suggest we move on, and please drop your question in the chat. We can take them after the main presentation is done.
Sure, let's move on to this one. Yeah, so myth number 3 is I cannot be creative in case interviews. So where this is coming from is because a lot of times new aspirants who are trying to make it into product, they like there's a lot of PM coaching that happens on internet, which says, hey, you need to mug up a lot of frameworks for every situation, every type of case interview. You need to have a framework at the back of your mind. And then there's this constant discussion about, hey, if I'm boxing myself in a framework, am I really being creative, right? I think Sreyash Doshi, who is an ex-Stripe PM and a big influencer and somebody that I really, really look up to, his post really summarizes it, right? He says that if a particular organization discards a candidate just because he or she was not able to provide a quote unquote framework, then probably the hiring strategy is all wrong, right? Now, I decode this and I interpret his tweet in my own way. So for me, right, what does the ideal approach to a case interview look like? I would like to take care of 4 or 5 different things as part of the preparation, right? First is practice makes it perfect. It's like a muscle that you have to build. So there's no alternative to practicing. And it's something which is a skill, which means it's something learnable and coachable. And there are today enough content on YouTube or on the internet where you can just go and practice case studies, find a partner to even practice mock interviews with, right? So you would need at least 80 to 100 hours of case interview practice. Even if you're not doing all types of cases, the 4 types that I called out on the first slide, those are the ones that at least you need to focus on and be comfortable around, right? So, and how is this, how did I come up with this 80 to 100 hours? It's like if you're spending about 1 to 2 hours every day, so on a week, you would be typically spending about 10 hours. So in a typical month, you spend 40 hours. So typically you need 1 to 2 months, which is 80 to 100 hours of prep to go through all the case studies and see how what differentiates an average answer from a good answer. Once you have digested that, I think that's a good starting point to start appearing in interviews. The next point I would like to call out in terms of what makes a average interview versus a great interview answer is you need to really provide non-obvious user insights. What do I mean by non-obvious? So for example, if I say, what's your favorite product and why do you like it? Somebody can say, my favorite product is LinkedIn because its feed is amazing. Now, that doesn't like that is a valid answer, but any layman can say that. If I am the product manager, I need to have a much more detailed insight about who my users are and why they are really so gung-ho about my platform, right? So we'll do a quick exercise on providing non-obvious user insights and what it really means. But as a product manager, you should be able to call out or provide some user insight, some user behavior that showcases that you are really thinking about it in a deeper level, in a level 2 or a level 3, right? So if you have to talk about use cases, talk about level 1 use cases, go into the level 2 and level 3 use cases as well. That really would showcase your product sense in the interview. And that can also be something that may come across as very creative, right? Because not everybody will consider those level 2 or level 3 use cases. So yes, this is the creativity part. I think as a product manager, the more user empathy and user understanding you're able to bring on the table, showcase it, that is what creativity is in my mind. And there's a way to do that, and that as per me is by following a structure. Now when I say a structure, I don't uh, mean you need to mug up or box yourself in a specific framework. Again, maybe to start with, learning frameworks is a good cheat sheet to start structuring, getting into those mental models. But in an average interview, the interviewer could throw you any curveball. So it's best to have one generic framework in mind, like a game or a star. So game really means what are the goals of my product, who are my users, which is and what are the actions that the users take. From there, you drill down into what are the metrics that you want to target, and then you evaluate certain ideas and prioritize them. That's game. Similarly, a very common framework is understand the situation, and then understand what are the gaps, and then you provide recommendations and you prioritize it. So have a generic framework and some mental models. For example, internal versus external, supply versus demand. These are very common mental models which will help you to think through different aspects of the problem. So think about bringing a structure. You can also use something like a user journey map if it helps you to create a structure of your own. And of course, you need to tell a story and add a personal touch. I think this is where um, you get a chance to link your current experience to the problem. So for example, if you are given a question that number of DAUs on the daily active users on Swiggy, they are going down. Swiggy is a food delivery app here in India. So number of daily active users of Swiggy are going down. How will you investigate the issue? You can always connect it to, hey, you know what? I took this course on GoPractice where we did this case study on InstaChat, and you just link it to that, right? And then say, this is how I think I would approach the problem. You don't have to always have a working experience on the problem. You can also say things like, I read this amazing blog, and from there, I am drawing a parallel here. So this is the structure. So just if you're able to provide those type of, it's basically storytelling, right? And it makes you look like somebody who is thorough, who is well read, and who is trying to link their past experience with a problem in hand. So basically somebody who's logical, able to connect the dots. So yeah, that's the last tip I have in terms of how can you really start forming a great answer.
Mhm. Thank you so much.
So
Yeah,
I
that actually
see
makes.
some questions in the chat.
Yeah. Do you want me to read them out? Would you prefer to read them yourself?
Yeah, I can read it.
Sure.
So
Well,
the,
I'm sure
yeah,
I
the
really
first,
liked. Just to top on this, as experience in the interviews, and when you're applying for a European company, an American company, like you said, it doesn't have to be your own experience. Just reading blog or just the same as GoPractice. That's why we try to say, hey, use our examples. Because you're working on a product, it's a simulated data, you know how it goes in real life world. So feel free to use this experience and say, hey, this is how it turned out. So yeah, I'm 100% all for sharing the examples and applying your background and your knowledge from the courses or the books into your answers at the interview.
yeah, sure. So I have two questions in the chat. So the first one is from the system design point of view. Some tech companies ask PMs about system design questions. How much technical know-how from system design perspective is one supposed to know? I think it depends upon the role, Advait. If it is a technical product manager role, let's say something which Amazon has, then probably you are supposed to have those tech chops. You are supposed to know about system design. But if it is not a technical product manager role, let's say it's a growth PM role, I don't think you are supposed to know a lot about system design. In my experience, it has always been more about the user persona and the user flow, and less about the system design itself. Sure, you're still supposed to know stuff like retries and latencies, functional requirements, non-functional requirements, but not to a lot of details in meaning like networking protocols and stuff like that, which in a typical engineering system design, an engineer should be able to tell whether while designing a chat system, if they want to use HTTPS or some other protocol, right? So I don't think that level of details is required in a PM interview, unless again it is a technical product management interview. So if you're a PM in Cisco who is managing networking equipments or networking software, probably you're supposed to know about networks, right? So it depends from role to role. That would be my take on it.
Thank you.
The next question is it necessary or good to add some artifacts such as user flows, user research insights from previous work experience as part of the resume? So I think anybody can be as creative as they want. I mean, all of us have seen the Marissa Mayer resume, the Yahoo executive resume, right? She made it really visual and all of that. So I think it's up to each individual how they want to creatively showcase their portfolio. The only guideline I would want to call out is limit your resume to a 1 or 2 pager and not make it too heavy. And I'll come to resume specifically. I'll just share some guidelines around that. But yeah, there's nothing like if you have a good portfolio, if you have a GitHub repo or some other website where you maintain all your mockups or your designs, definitely it's a good idea to actually provide the link in the resume. And these days, basically, if it's a PDF or a soft copy of your resume, the interviewer can click there. But I don't know whether that would really be a differentiator when it comes to shortlisting. Shortlisting typically would be done by the HR recruiter. They probably would do the shortlisting mostly based on keywords and how closely the job description is matching to the experience that you have. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Shall we continue with the presentation? There's any slides left, or can we take some more questions?
Yeah, let's go through the slides, then we'll come back to the questions.
Sure. Okay. I'm sorry, it's just going back again to the presentation. And yes.
Sure. So let's do a quick, brainstorming on a sample problem. So if you have threads, like why do threads in Twitter get more engagement than a tweet that links to a blog post with the same content? So if you are asked as a PM this question, how would you typically approach it?
Please feel free to share in the chat or just unmute your mic and share your ideas with us.
I will maybe just take a quick 30 seconds, 1 minute for people to
Sure, just
give
it a, yeah. And I'll also think about this problem as well. I love solving cases, and it's always good to practice. Okay, so we have a first answer from Ajay. He's saying user engagement. Okay.
Yeah, so
yeah. Shruti is adding.
Shruti has.
Yeah, it kind of redirects people to different site and place. Pri is adding there's less friction. Okay. The threads are concise points so that a reader need to not go out of the app to read. Accessibility from Daisy. Thank you.
Yeah, I think these are all great points.
Yeah.
These are all great points, right? Now, if this was your question in a typical interview, how I would typically approach it is I'll start by saying who is my user and what is the user's journey. So typically a user who is coming to Twitter first would see a tweet, then would engage with it and would want to be rewarded if he or she is engaging with the tweet, right? So those are the 3 buckets. Now, once I've established this type of, and it could be any other structure also. This is how I would probably do it. If it's an unknown problem, I'll just create a quick user journey with 3-4 steps, and then I'll start forming hypothesis under each of these areas. So let's move to the next slide. So I would come up with something like this. These are my main buckets of hypothesis areas. And then I would come and frame some level 2 use cases for each of these areas, right? In an interview, you need not be able to, create uh, like 3 or 4 level 2 use cases for each of these areas. That is okay. But if you are able to first start with that structure, that okay, as a user, I log in, I first see the app, I start engaging with it, and then I get rewarded. Maybe somebody else retweets if I'm doing something, replying or something, right? So those are the 3 high level hypotheses. Uh, the point I'm trying to make is it's always good to start by following a structure which gives the high level use cases, and then you start doing the level 2 use cases. So if we go to the next slide again here.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of you came up with the level 2 use cases, which says about less friction and all of that, right? Now, there are other things around the engagement also. For example, when a user is going in a blog, it's not as intuitive to engage with the content creator. So you may be writing a comment, but it's more personal in Twitter, where if you are tweeting, maybe the guy replies back to you. It's more engaging. And the engagement options are more inbuilt. And when I talk about the last bucket, which is higher reward for engaging, so this is also more to do with social proofing. For example, if I see a tweet by my favorite person, then I would be elated. Or if I also, retweet on a particular, let's say it's a multi-threaded tweet. Out of that, I select tweet number 4. I react to it, and I retweet it, and somebody else likes it. So that sort of an experience is missing in a blog. So the point here is, if you are able to bring out these type of deeper user empathy in your interview, it differentiates your answer from an average answer. That's the key takeaway that I want to drive home.
Okay, thank you. Shall we go to next one?
Let's go to the next one. So versus this, right? This is like a creative guy probably throwing a lot of ideas. It still covers all of it, but it's not as structured. So always try and come up with a structure and then bucket all of your ideas. Yeah, let's go over. So myth number 4 is I need to understand tech. I think this is what somebody already asked, and we kind of addressed that. I think there are 4 things that an interviewer, while interviewing a PM candidate, would be looking for. User empathy, first principles thinking. Are you able to influence without power? And are you data driven? So as long as you're taking care of these 4 boxes, yeah, I think it should be fine if it's unless it's a super technical role. Since we have already covered this particular point, we'll move on to the next one. Yeah, so this is around tips for building a resume. So I'll quickly go over this, and then because we got 2 resumes from our cohort today, we can go through those resumes and probably provide pointed feedback. Is that okay?
Sure. We actually got 4 because the resumes keep coming, but let's just do this. We'll take a look at at a couple as long as we have time, and later on, if we have some more, maybe we can do it asynchronously, or just take a look and see the main mistakes or just some errors there. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. So I follow a specific framework when I add bullets to my resume. It's called CAR, context action result. Basically, any point that you are talking about or putting forth in a resume should be framed like this. What was the context? What is the action you took? And what was the result that you delivered? Right? So I think that's one of the main things that I see when I look at resumes that come my way for review. Most of them are talking about the action. I did X, I did Y, but it does not give the context, or it does not articulate the result in a very easy way. So again, PMs are supposed to be storytellers. They are supposed to communicate in an easy language, and that's easier said than done. And because your interviewer will not be part of the domain that you are working on, right? It can happen that he or she belongs to a very different domain. They may not be able to relate to a lot of these results if you're not dumbing it down for them. So this is one framework that I would recommend all our participants to follow. And a few other hygiene things is starting with action words, showing the diversity in experience, which I already covered about. Like from that slide of 12 to 16 areas, pick which 4 or 5 things that you have done in your experience, and showcase diversity in your profile. Add keywords, that is very important. Keywords like requirements document, high fidelity mockup, anything and everything related to PM technical skills. If you are not adding them, then the job portal search engines will not probably give a good rank to your resume. So you need to add keywords, love it or hate it. The next point is, yeah, I already talked about highlighting different PM skills. When it comes to education experience, and like if you have a really solid grade, feel free to highlight that. But otherwise, I have not seen grades being asked by any interviewer. So that's that. I like resumes which are visually appealing versus which is very textual. So figure out how you want to highlight certain things. It's like a UI for me. So figure out what are the sections that you really want to highlight, and figure out how you can reduce the cognitive load for your interviewer. To like, you can't possibly highlight everything and anything that you have done. So you have to sort of prioritize and organize your sections that way, and that is where you can get really creative. But try and make it a bit visually appealing, not by adding too many colors, but it should be easy to read, and somebody should be able to glance through it and quickly make out what are the top 3 or 4 areas skills that the candidate has, and if that is matching with the job requirement also. Make it balanced. This is very important. So a lot of times I have seen resumes, let's say I have switched 3 4 jobs. I'm in my 4th job right now, and I have just joined this new company in a year, where my previous experiences, I have stayed there for 3 years 4 years in each stint. Now, typically, what happens is, because of recency bias or any other reason, I will have 6 or 7 bullet points for my last 1 year of experience, and I'll have only 1 or 2 bullet points for my previous years of experience. Now, that creates a very negative impression, because it seems like somebody has not done anything in those last few years, and all the good work is being done just in 1 year. So you need to make your resume very, very balanced. By that I mean, just have 2 or 3 bullet points across the board. It's okay if you want to add 1 or 2 extra bullets to your current role, but you still need to make it balanced and not make it overly front loaded.
That's so
And
true.
yeah.
Yeah, and as long as you're talking, I think it's a very, very tricky part where everybody's thinking, okay, there's the hot market is like it's boiling, and then how can I make my resume stand out? And there's a question in chat regarding this point, saying, can you share some list of keywords which we should add in our resume? Do you think there is a list? Would you agree there's something that can help you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you should Google for it. Product manager keywords for resume. You'd get a bunch of good content.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of resources on Google actually. You can figure
Okay.
that out. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other way, just to complete the other way to do that is, if you have a JD, scan through that JD and pick out keywords from the JD itself, and then you should be able to do a quick gap analysis from there also.
That's true. That's so true. And another one is saying, can you please share a few resumes that you would recommend to go through? Like, is there an ultimate perfect resume that would say, well, this is the one, this is you should keep in mind when making your own?
That's a good question. So I think it depends from person to person, based on their own strengths and what they want to highlight. For example, if somebody is a gold medalist or a university topper, they would probably want to highlight their education, but that probably is more appealing for a fresher. If somebody already has, let's say, 5 or 6 years of industry experience, probably I will not put education at the top. Again, there's no right or wrong answer to it, but it really depends on what is the candidate trying to showcase by highlighting certain sections, right? In terms of one go-to resume, I don't think there is something that I have. I typically look at there are some paid resources online where you can download resume templates. You can just pay $200 and get the resume template of your choice. That just makes it very easy to create a visually appealing resume. I think some of the key things that I want people to highlight, or they need to highlight, is skills. Skills should be a separate section where you're just telling product strategy, product marketing, growth marketing, blah blah. Like, just talk about your skills. It could be like from a product chops, or it could be more like tools that you have worked on, right? Like, let's say you have worked on amplitude as a tool, or let's say UX spin as a wireframing tool. So just call out those things, both from an expertise standpoint, like product strategy, product execution, road mapping, product PRD, right? And the technical tools exposure as well. That is very important. Other than that, I don't have a standard template that I can share.
There
But
is
I
no
would be
magic
happy
wand.
to, there's a magic wand, but I can probably look at few resumes, time permitting, and then give some feedback. And feel free to reach out to me. I can give more personal tailored feedback offline also.
Thank you. So it's very generous offer. So guys, please use it. If you have a resume, you can send it, and we'll see, what other ways to improve it. That will help a lot. Definitely, Shruti. Shall we continue?
Yeah, let's continue.
I hope the presentation yes, it's
yeah. So we have 10 minutes to go through the resumes. Before doing that, let's do a quick pulse check across the board if there are any other questions before we deep dive into resumes.
Please drop them in chats, or just as usual.
Yeah.
Will be helping those. And while you do so, I'll just find the CV that was sent to us. I think Naveen was the one who was the first one to send, so we'll start with his resume. Naveen, are you here?
So yeah, while you are looking for that, I'll also share a quick experience that like how I made the switch, because I was working in Deloitte as a tech strategy, as a management consultant. So typically getting the shortlist is the biggest hurdle, and it took me a good amount of like almost a month and a half to start getting shortlists. So my resume also went through multiple iterations, reached out to friends, mentors who kept getting their valuable inputs, and that's a journey that everybody goes through. So yeah, I think that's the learning. And I like, unless you're very selective about which type of roles or companies you want to apply to, I think just blast and keep applying to any PM job opening that comes. You always have the option of appearing for the interview and not finally taking the role. But what will end up happening is you would know what's working in terms of getting a shortlist, what's working in terms of cracking the case, right? So consider it as a marketing funnel. Blast out 100 emails. You would get calls from probably 20. You would be able to crack probably 5. So treat it as a funnel, and don't be saddened if you're not getting rejects. It's a funnel at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Just don't get discouraged. Just go there and step by step, please eliminate the things, polish and keep on polishing until you get there. So yeah. And I think, can you see my screen? We have a resume from an amazing student. So he sent it in. Could you please take a look at it and say what drives your attention to it? What could be done better? Is it an overall good resume? Can you call it? Or is it like, you wouldn't pick it up if you were the one to choose?
Yeah, so I'll probably talk about what is striking out from me in this resume, right? So the first impression I'm getting, and again, please, this is not a good or bad thing. I'm just giving my candid feedback and opinion. So by looking at this, it's a very text-heavy resume. If I am already reading multiple documents throughout the day and I just need to take a glance and understand, I really have to make an effort and go inside each and every bullet point. The candidate should try and distill or synthesize their experience. I was talking about having a separate skills section, right? I do see skills and tools, but look at some standard resume templates. Some of them, like you would know this, typically a reader's gaze would go to the top right corner, right? So maybe that is the section where you can put your skills and highlight them. Right now, skills is in the middle of the resume. So that's not a place I would look for if I want to get information that somebody's trying to highlight, right? So that's one. Now let's deep dive into the experience. Uh, so senior product analyst, open weaver. So the candidate has about 2 years of experience working in this role. A deep take. So that tells me that he is a stable candidate. He is not switching too much of jobs, which is good. Improved activation events from X to Y percentage by recommending actionable insights. So if you go back to my CAR framework, this starts with the action or probably the result, improved X, right? By recommending. So this is so it's still not in the context, action and result. And by the way, improved activation events doesn't tell me anything because I am not part of the deep tech startup search engine for open source components. I don't understand what activation events are. So this comes back to, as a PM, you need to simplify it and really dumb it down. So probably how I would tweak it is recommended actionable insights or analyzed. So what is the context? I analyzed actionable various data sources. Probably I can say what data sources. I can, if it's a payments thing, I can say cards, debits, blah, blah, blah. Like just give the business nuance of what type of data source it is, because analyzing data source doesn't tell me what, doesn't tell me any skill. It's not conveying any skill. So you can say analyzed X, Y, and Z. That's the context. To improve activation events, you can probably simplify, which achieved whatever business goal you're trying to achieve. It could be higher user engagement or better accuracy. That really is the impact. I don't think improving activation event in itself is the impact, unless it is and you're able to articulate that. So that is my take from this first point. It's not in that context, action, result framework, and the impact is not really coming out. I'm not able to understand the significance of activation events or the increment of activation event. Is it tied to a revenue goal, to a user engagement goal, to an accuracy of the tool? What does it really drive? So I'll take a quick pause. I'll see if there are any other thoughts on this specific thing, because it's open to interpretation as well. Any other thoughts, point of views? Cool. So the next point that I would talk about is, if I do a cursory glance of all the action words, one of my bullet was start all the bullets with action words. I see that. I see improved, optimized, right? Implemented. But this resume is probably lacking a bit of those PM keywords that I was talking about. It doesn't talk about whether, and probably because this person is a product analyst, but probably a product analyst would still contribute to grooming stories, writing a PRD, doing user research. I don't see those things striking out. It is more of, as a product analyst, sure, this person has done a lot of data analysis, which is clearly coming out. But as an aspiring PM, you are anyway collaborating with the product manager. As an analyst, you're collaborating with the product manager to do these things, right? The PM is anyway not taking care of these stuff alone. So you have to figure out a way on how you can showcase those things. You can say things like collaborate with the product manager to groom requirements, collaborate with the PM to do user research. It could be a collaboration, but you have still done that. And that really makes a difference.
Okay. Yeah, that does make lots of sense. And do you suggest to add some keywords if you're applying for a concrete position that's a dream company and they say, okay, we're looking for this and that type of candidate? Would you suggest adjusting your resume to one particular position if you're looking for a few ones?
I have not. What happens is, if there's a very specific role, if something is very domain heavy, a specific PM role has come up which is very domain heavy, I think they will not even consider PMs who don't have that domain experience.
Okay.
And if you already have that domain experience, then it will anyway come out in your resume. You cannot fudge a domain experience. But if there are PM openings or job descriptions which are not looking for a lot of domain experience, they would say that some payments experience is good to have, but without that also it's okay. We are looking for blah, blah, and blah. Collaboration skills, innovation, whatever, execution. They would say what they're really looking for in that JD, right? So yeah, if it's the dream company, again, it depends on the type of opening. If you don't have the relevant skill set or the domain exposure, there is no way you can fudge it. So even adding keywords will not help it. But keywords help in terms of bringing out your understanding of what a product manager does, like user research, prototyping, the usual stuff, doing a PRD. I think that is like a basic hygiene, I would say.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next resume? And what do you suggest?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me just add this one. I think very, very useful tips. And as long as you keep some of that in mind. This is definitely a way for you to make sure you got this shortlisted, you got this, the very moment that they say, okay, this is a candidate we want to see. Okay, so there's a next one. It's a 2-page resume. So let me know if I can, make it go to the next page. So this is the first page.
Sure. So yeah, I'll just start reacting on this. I think I really like the look and feel of the resume. This is what I was talking about when I was saying make it visually appealing, right? It has a very clear call out sections. So immediately like visually it just looks appealing, right? It just makes me happy. And I would be interested as a reader to just start invest that additional effort to go through it. So here I see that the education is the section that has been highlighted on top. Executive profile, I think it is okay if you skip it, if you have it. It doesn't really matter because in the sidebar, probably you are still talking about the number of years of experience, top skills, all of those things you can probably highlight in the left-hand section itself, which is the highlight part. So if you are getting rid of the executive profile, you are saving space and probably you can fit it in a smaller space. But again, it's not something which I would say is a negative. The only thing is, by adding an executive profile, what is it that you're really trying to highlight? Product manager with 14 plus years of experience in developing blah, 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 highly skilled. So skills I have already called out. 14 years is the only point that somebody wants to highlight because they may want to communicate that, hey, I'm a senior guy. I'm not somebody who I'm applying for APMs or PMs, but probably I'm applying for SPMs. Maybe you can find a way to do that in the left-hand side itself. That would just save you space. That's just my take on it. Education, I see that this candidate is a gold medalist. So probably a good thing to highlight it in the education. But again, because I have 14 years of experience, what exactly does gold medal? Because if I am applying for an SPM role with 14 years of experience, the candidate, the interview panel would be evaluating me more on my PM skills than the gold medal itself. They would not ask me what I did in college. So this really works for a fresher with 1 or 2 years of experience with strong acads. But for somebody with 14 years of experience, probably a gold medal, I will not look at this as a differentiator. I'll still have a mental impression that this guy is smart. And probably that's the only advantage here. Now, looking at the work history, I see that this person has worked from 2021 till current. So it's about a year and a half. And there are about so many 11, 12 bullets. But if you scroll down, can we go to the next page? So the previous experience was from 2011 to how many years? From 2011 to 20.
That's a lot of, I mean, it's 2022, which is more than 10 years.
Yeah, so this is a CV which is not balanced. This tells me that you cannot do so many things in a year and not do so many things in your previous organization. So this was what I was talking about from a balance standpoint. And it's not like so look at it that in this way. It's like an information overload. And if you throw so much information at me, I really don't know what to filter out with. So prioritize and see what you really want to highlight. For example, if we do a deeper analysis, can you scroll up again to the first one? So here the person is talking about product manager for energy stack. The third bullet says for energy core. Why do I need to have 2 bullets? As an interviewer, I have got no clue what energy stack and energy core is. And calling out these 2 different product names doesn't convey any different skill also. So probably it could be summarized in 1 bullet. It's not it's sort of like a redundant point. So try and find ways to cut down on information redundancy and see how you can really bring out diversity in your profile. For example, help private cloud business grow by USD. But this is a good point because this shows that you have been working on the revenue side of things. But what is missing here is the context action result framework. Helped how? What was your specific action that you took? What was your contribution? That is not coming out. Maybe you did some data analysis. You did some data analysis, figured out the gaps to give some sales input, which helped to grow, right? Or maybe you built a feature which helped to grow. What was your specific contribution here? That's not coming out here. So I think it needs to follow that context action result framework and needs to be really, really specific. and tell the impact in a better way. What was your role that should come out in a better way?
Can you comment on the 2 pages of the resumes? Like, would you suggest it to be 1 page instead of 2 pages? Because I can see so many people advising, like, make it 1 page because the HRs don't have too much time. What do you think about that?
I think like 1 page is always ideal, but for a senior candidate who has got, let's say, 4 or 5 different companies, for each of them, they are talking about 2 or 3 bullets, it will spill over to 1.5 pages.
Okay.
So I think that's okay. But if it's very dense, just figure out that it's not dense. It should be well balanced. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so thank you so much for today. And I'll probably be sending our amazing speaker 2 more resumes we have left, and we'll probably discuss it in the Slack channel. So thank you everybody for coming today. I think it's very, very useful part, because after completing the course, the real life kicks in, and some of you want to switch to PM, some of you want to change your roles or something. And please make sure, just always stay encouraged and know these amazing tips, and probably your next big gig is just around the corner. Thank you everybody. We'll send the recording after this session, and we'll also continue our chat in Slack channel. Thank you so much and have a great day.